Story time about how my boyfriend took me back after I cheated. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade, and my boyfriend Jacob and I had just gotten back together. We'd been together for a year, but we were having some issues, so we broke up for a little bit. Well, only after a week of him and I being back together, I cheated on him. I started texting this guy and I ended up sending nudes to him, and he sent them to my boyfriend, of course. Yeah, I know, that's what I get for cheating. I'm a terrible person, blah, 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 get over it. Well, when my boyfriend confronted me about it, I told him the truth about it and he broke up with me. And I regretted it so much. A month later, I decided to reach out to him. I was like, hey, that was the worst mistake I've ever made and I want to try again. Thankfully for me, he took me back. But the first few months of us being back together were miserable. People were starting rumors that I was cheating on him again. It was literal hell. Moral of the story, if you want to get with somebody else, just break up with your partner. So if you want to get back with them, things are a little bit salvageable.
My bestie caught me flirting with her ex and now she doesn't want to talk to me. Am I wrong for this? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My bestie and I have a long history. We met in high school and we were inseparable. We both even followed the same career and opened up a business together. So she started dating this guy, let's call him Rex. Rex was extremely good looking, but their relationship fizzled out really quick. She was a party girl and he was a homebody. He always needed to have friends around and he thought that was annoying because he wanted to be alone with her. Fast forward 2 months, he breaks up with her. And 6 months later, guess who slides into my DMs? Rex. From the moment he messaged me, he was very clear that he liked me and that I was more his type. He flirted a lot on DM, but I had no intention of actually doing anything with him. My bestie caught a glimpse of a text he sent and she went berserk. Now she doesn't want to talk to me and I feel like she's overreacting. Am I wrong for this? I mean, I wasn't going to do anything.
Storytime about my experience with karma. So a little background information, I was 17 and in 11th grade, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a mean person. Well, not kind of, I just was mean. Like, I got joy out of annoying and making fun of people. Yeah, I know there was something probably wrong with me, leave me alone. Anyway, so I would low-key always bully my cousin, and when she would get upset about it, I would make it seem as if it was a joke. Well, I guess the one day she had enough of me, because there was this boy that I really liked and we didn't know each other at all. Like, we had never spoken one word to each other. And my cousin knew that I liked this boy. So she decided that she was going to email him asking him out. And no, this isn't one of those situations where she tried to steal the guy that I liked. Nope, instead she went on my email and emailed him acting like me. Sis must have been determined to get her lick back because I don't even know how she knew the password to my email. So the next day at school, him and I are in citizenship, and we're all on our laptops for this lesson. Well, all of a sudden, I hear him whisper my name to the popular girl that sits next to him, like for part 2. Part 2 about my experience with karma. So like I said, I heard him whisper my name to the popular girl that sits next to him, and she has never liked me. I never bullied her. I know I said I was a mean person, but I didn't bully her. She just hated me. So of course she thinks it would be funny to confront me in front of the whole class, and she's like, why would you email him asking him out? Not only was I embarrassed, but I was shocked because I was like, what are you talking about? Honestly, I thought that they were lying, so I was like, whatever, I'll check when I get home. Well, when I went home that day and checked my email, what do you know? There it is. An email sent from my laptop saying, hey, I really like you. Do you want to go out with me? I forget how, but I found out that it was my cousin. I didn't do anything to her because the damage was already done at that point, but I got bullied so bad for the rest of that week. And I don't even know why. Everybody was being so extra about it. It's not like this kid had a girlfriend or anything, but people were whispering rude things to me in class. And the one day that week while I was in the locker room, that popular girl starts yelling that I have blood on my pants. Like, she screamed it so loud, everybody heard it. And I tried asking my cousin if there was anything. She was ignoring me. So now on top of the whole email situation, I was dealing with that. Obviously, eventually everything died down. But I definitely learned my lesson and I'm no longer a bully.
Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? His best friend is a girl. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's not on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have only been dating for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We actually met a couple of months ago on a dating app. We went on several dates over the course of 4 months, and after that he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. While we were dating, I met a couple of his friends, one of them being his girl best friend, and she is bi, which I did know of. Okay, but here's the messed up thing. The day I met this girl, she was staring at me. Not just like staring at me a little bit, hardcore staring. She even told my boyfriend that I was so attractive that he needed to take care of me because she could snatch me up. And she said this in front of me. My boyfriend thought it was hilarious and just laughed at her. And to be honest with you, even though yes, she's a girl, she made me feel extremely uncomfortable. She would always compliment my body in front of everybody. She would comment on how my boobs are so big. We all went to the beach one time and she said, I quote, if your bikini top pops off, I don't mind, girl. I did not laugh. She even went up behind me and tried to untie my bikini. My boyfriend thought it was so funny. Part 2 is Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's on me on Instagram. When she tried to untie my bikini top, I got really upset. I yelled at her, but my boyfriend thought it was funny. When my boyfriend and I got back to his apartment, I told him that his best friend made me really uncomfortable. And he said, "You're being so stupid. She's just a girl." I said that didn't matter because she always made comments about my physical appearance and how she was going to steal me from him. He promised he would talk to her and tell her to lay off. But this did the exact opposite. The next day, I get a DM from her saying, "So I heard I make you feel uncomfortable?" I didn't respond to that and I showed it to my boyfriend. My boyfriend just said, "Don't worry about it, just ignore her." Then she sent another message saying, "I'm sorry if I intimidate you." I was so upset that I replied saying, "You definitely don't intimidate me. You constantly objectify me and that's completely unacceptable." Then she sent me a poop emoji. And that was it. The next time I saw her, I purposely did not even look her way. This was at a party and there were tons of people. But she managed to follow me around the whole night and asked me why I wasn't talking to her. Finally, she grabbed me and kissed me. Part 3 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's on Instagram. During the party, she just kept following me around. She would ask me over and over why I wasn't talking to her, but of course I just kept ignoring her. I finally went over to the kitchen to grab a drink, and that's when she grabbed me, turns me around, and just puts her face on mine. She stuck her tongue all the way down my throat. It was disgusting. And she had a really strong hold on me, so I couldn't push her off right away. To tell you that we struggled is an understatement. And I finally got her off of my face after like 30 seconds. I pushed her so hard she fell backwards. And I ran straight to my boyfriend and told him what happened. Thankfully, he was really upset with her and went straight to talk to her. Honestly, part of me thought that he was just gonna take her side. We both went to the kitchen and he asked her what her problem was. That's when she told my boyfriend that she was convinced that I liked her and that for some reason I was just denying it because I wanted to play hard. By the way, she did have a few drinks, so I guess it could be that. I told her that she was actually hallucinating and that I did not have feelings for her. I also told her not to ever touch me again. My boyfriend told her not to come around anymore, but it doesn't stop there. He actually tried to kiss me again later on. Part 4 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's not even on Instagram. She promised she wouldn't try to kiss me again, but she lied. Just a few days later, my boyfriend had forgiven her. She made up a whole story to him that she was depressed about another girl and that somehow I reminded her of the other girl. Then my boyfriend said, "Do you mind if she comes over?" And I told him as long as she didn't try to touch me, everything would be fine. This time, I was gonna defend myself. Do you see where this is going? A few of my boyfriend's friends showed up and then she showed up last. And as soon as she saw me, she came over and tried to hug me. I told her hugging was not necessary for an apology, that her words were fine. She then apologizes. Not 2 hours later, while everyone is in the backyard, I go to the kitchen. And she follows me again. This time she kissed me, but it was much quicker and I didn't have to push her off. Then she said, "What, are you gonna run and tell your boyfriend again?" Instead, I smacked her. Really, really hard. So hard, you could see my palm print on her face. Then she apologized and begged me not to tell my boyfriend. He's afraid of losing his friendship. And I actually did feel bad for her for a second, but I'm not sure anymore. Should I tell my boyfriend or should I keep this to myself? Bye.
Story time about how this girl and her boyfriend beat me up. So a little background information, I was in 11th grade and I was 17 years old. And in the summer, my friend and I went to go and watch fireworks for the 4th of July at this park. And most of the people there went to a completely different school. But we ended up meeting this group of guys and I was really vibing with the one guy who was there. He was super cute, super chill, and we got along great. And I just want to put this out there, I did not think to ask that he had a girlfriend because he was being super flirtatious and just really wasn't acting like he had a girlfriend. I literally just hate how we have to ask people if they're in relationships now because they don't want to be honest or loyal. And then we look like the bad guys because they were dishonest. Anyway, so him and I start to hang out a lot and he really likes me, I really like him. And we went to this football game at his school and we ended up doing the nasty. After that, I'm in the bleachers with my friends and one of my friends tells me, yeah, he has a girlfriend. So she couldn't have told me this before we did the nasty. Anyways, like for part 2. About how this guy and his girlfriend literally beat me up. So like I said, him and I did the nasty at the football game and then I go onto the bleachers with my friends and she tells me that he has a girlfriend. But I'm not gonna lie, at this point we had already been talking for 2 months and I really didn't care because I liked him and I wasn't just gonna turn my feelings off. First of all, I do not owe that girl any loyalty. Number 2, we were already intimate with each other, so I don't know what could make this situation worse than it already was. I mean, I did confront him about it and he told me that he was gonna break up with her for me. So I believed him. I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna wait for him to break it off with her and I'm still gonna talk to him. So eventually he literally made me wait for like 2 more months. So what did I do? I told his girlfriend everything. I'm not gonna lie, it's not even that I wanted to be a good person. It was literally just to spite him. It's like, yeah, your man wants to be with me. He don't want you. This is the text messages of him telling me that he was gonna break up with you. That day he called me and he was like, hey, do you wanna hang out? And I was shook that he did not bring up anything that I said to his girlfriend. Like for part 3. Story time about how my sister sold my nudes. Yes, My own sister. So a little background information, I was in 12th grade and I was pretty popular. And my sister, on the other hand, she was in 9th grade. I'm not even saying this to boost my ego, but she was jealous of me and everybody could tell. Mainly because of the fact that she didn't have her high school glow up, she low-key still looked like a 6th grader. And there were very few guys who gave her attention, and some of the guys would even tell her that I was hotter than her. So that did not help the situation at all. Not like I even paid attention to any of these guys because I had a boyfriend. And my sister and I still shared a room even though our brothers got their own rooms. So she could literally go through my shit anytime she wanted. Well, since we shared a room and I'd never thought that she would sell my nudes, sometimes I would take these exposing pictures of myself while she was in the room. Well, she had this one friend named Jessica who also was weirdly obsessed with me. One night she was saying how funny it would be to sell someone's nudes. Like part 2 about how my sister sold my nudes. So like I said, my sister had this friend, and the one night they were talking about how funny it would be to sell somebody's pics. We all laughed, joked about it, the conversation was over and done with. I thought that was it. Like, in all honesty, I thought it was one of those things where you guys make plans to do something, and then after the conversation, you never talk about it again, and you never actually do what you said you were going to do because it was so out of pocket. So my sister's friend slept over that night, and I woke up, went to school earlier because I have volunteer work to do, so my sister usually just takes the bus. Well, I accidentally left my computer at school, so I called my sister, asked her if she could grab it and bring it into school. Now, my computer is connected to my phone. Well, I guess they decided to be little creeps, and they went on my computer, and they found my pictures, and they sent them to themselves. And since my phone and computer are hooked up, I was able to see that they sent the pictures to themselves. So I start blowing up her phone, but by first period, I had a bunch of people telling me that they were about to buy my pictures. My sister literally made an ad and put it on Snapchat. My boyfriend broke up.
I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. 11 years ago, I was set to marry a man that I'd only known for 6 months. As some of you might know, I am an actress, and that's how I met him. We were both cast in the same film as boyfriend and girlfriend. And because of this, the director wanted us to spend time together and create chemistry. The director even asked us to rehearse some of our kissing scenes, which really we only rehearsed one time. Was it awkward? Absolutely. But spending so much time together during rehearsals really did it. It's kind of hard to not develop feelings for somebody that you're working with who just happens to be attractive and you're supposed to be developing this chemistry. A few weeks later, we were dating. A few months later, we decided to move to LA together to pursue our acting dreams. But soon after we moved to LA, the cracks started showing. I am the poster child for a go-getter. I'm a hustler. I will do everything in my power to chase my dreams. His motivation was not the same. While I had 4 jobs, he had 1 job. I was paying for the bills. I was even paying for his student loans. I was sending out emails and submitting both of us to projects. Are you angry yet? Because it gets worse. I was his provider in every sense of the word. Part 2 is up. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. I was paying for the bills, providing for him, even paying off his student loans. I also cooked for him, and I also helped him by trying to find him acting jobs. I was the best possible fiance he could have ever asked for. Around that time, I decided to quit some of my jobs. I transitioned over to working at a dancing club as a cocktail waitress. And this is around the time that I asked him if he could get a higher paying job. At the time, he was working at a movie theater. He was making $8 an hour, and to him, this was enough. It was enough because I was paying for the rest. When I wanted to quit my jobs, he was against it. Why do you think? I felt like his bank account, like a debit card he could swipe every time he needed money. He would take and I would give. So when I asked him to consider getting a better job, he told me that he didn't want to because his best friend worked at the movie theater he worked at. He was comfortable. He loved his job. It was an easy job for a man. I got to watch all the free movies I wanted. What more could I ask for? A partner that would help me? No, that was too much to ask for. But can you believe that it actually does get worse? Part 3 is up. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. When I asked him to get a higher paying job so he could help me out with the bills, he flat out said no. His job at the theater was too cozy. And a few weeks later, I experienced something horrible at the dance club that I was working at, which made me reflect on every choice I had made up until that point. I left my family to move away with somebody I didn't know, to a new city, thousands of miles away. I left my mom with major depression. To this day, I still hold so much guilt for that. And I told my fiance about the essay that I experienced at the club. His response was for me to get over it. When I told him I wanted to quit, he said no. How dare I try to quit the job that was providing for him? I broke up with him 2 days later, only to fall into an even more toxic relationship. But that's for another time. Self-care sister out.
Story time about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. And there was this boy that I really liked who lived like 10 minutes away from me. So the one night he asked me if I wanted to hang out. And my mom was strict about me not hanging out with people after 7 o'clock at night. Especially a boy. I wasn't even allowed to hang out with boys. And my grandma, my mom, and my brother and I all lived together. And we all had our own rooms. Mine was on the first floor of the house, so I snuck out the window and I went and hung out with him. So I snuck out at around 3 and came back at around 4 a.m. And my grandma comes into my room to wake me up for school. And I guess that I had been laying on my side and my hair was like pulled up. Because literally all I remember waking up to is her smacking me up out of my sleep and screaming at me because there was a hickey on my neck. She's like, I'm telling your mom whenever she gets home, your window's gonna be screwed shut. And I keep telling her it's not a hickey, so she calls my brother over. And he's like, yeah, that's definitely a hickey, because he likes to kiss her ass. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, she's like, I'm telling your mom, and I keep telling her that it's not a hickey. And thankfully, my mom already went to work. She had work at 6 a.m. So I got on the bus, I go to school, and I'm talking to my friend and telling her about how I'm literally going to be crucified whenever I get home. And she told me about how her older sister was in like the same situation that I'm in now. So she texted her older sister asking what she did because she never got caught. And I was like, okay, well, if she used makeup, my mom's going to find out because she's not dumb. Well, apparently her older sister burnt herself with a curling iron. Yes, literally burnt herself, but she ended up getting away with it. So fast forward, I get home at around 3 o'clock and I sneak in through the back door so that way my grandma won't see that I came in the house, because she literally would have made me sit in the living room until my mom got home. So I go upstairs and I burn myself with a curling iron, which is not fun. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, I snuck in through the back door so that way my grandma wouldn't see me, because if she saw me, she would have made me wait in the living room with her until my mom got home. So, you know, burnt myself with the curling iron and my mom gets home. And since I'm on the first floor, I can literally hear my grandma talking to my mom and my brother, of course. My grandma's like, yeah, she has hickeys all over her neck. Which is literally an exaggeration because there was one small one. So my mom calls me out to the living room. I go out and she's like, all right, show it to me. And I'm like, show you what? She's like, don't play stupid. Your grandma already told me the whole situation. And I was like, Mom, I literally burnt myself with a curling iron. And my grandma's like screaming and freaking out because I'm lying. She's like, you better tell your mother the truth right now. Da 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 da. So I show the burn to my mom. She looks at my grandma and she's like, so you're gonna tell me that's not a burn on her neck? And she was like, that's not how it looked this morning, blah, blah, blah. So I got away with it, but now my grandma literally stalks me to see if I'm doing anything wrong so she can tell my mom. Is a $40 foundation better than a $9 foundation? The two foundations that we have going up against each other are the She Glam Complexion Pro and the Airbrush Flawless Foundation. This at least looks like it's $30. So on this side, I'm going to do the She Glam foundation, and on the other side, I'm going to do the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. First things first, both of these foundations claim to have a matte finish that lasts all day, and it is supposed to feel like nothing is on your face. Also, both of these are supposed to be full coverage, and that's good to put to the test today because I do have a few blemishes. I am in literal shock right now. This is a dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. $9, $40, no beauty filter. They both look and feel the exact same way. Run. Do not walk. Run. And everybody can run because there are 30 shades. Like, I'm sorry, you will never catch me spending $40 on a foundation ever again.
Storytime about how my husband makes me pay for everything and still controls all of my money while he's totally unemployed and broke. Disclaimers is not my story time, send me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 6 years. 2 of those years we were separated, and we recently got back together last year. He lost his job during COVID, so when we got back together, he didn't have a lot of money. Obviously, I didn't really mind. I was just happy we were getting back together. And if you're wondering why we separated, it's because he got really jealous and controlling of everything I ever did. When we got back together, I told him that he needed to change that. And I really could see a change in him this time around. The only problem was that he refused to get a job. I have a really good salary. I make about $80,000 a month. Theoretically, I could totally support him. When I asked him why he didn't want to get a job, he told me that it just wasn't for him. And he also told me that he wanted some time off and he just wanted to travel. Well, this is when things start to get complicated. When we got back together, he was living with his parents, so he ended up moving into my very nice apartment. I live in a really beautiful high-rise. I have a doorman, a gym, indoor pool, and then he moved in with all of his junk. I had to start paying for everything. Anytime he wanted to go to dinner or order food or buy groceries, I was the one footing the bill. He even uses my Amazon account to order whatever he wants. While he was at home playing video games, I was in my office working my ass off. But things get worse. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how my husband controls all my money while he's unemployed and totally broke. Disclaimers is not my storytime, send me on Instagram. After 3 months of me paying for everything and him using using my Amazon account to buy whatever he wanted, including gaming consoles. This man had the audacity to tell me that I was spending too much money on my designer bags. Yeah, you heard that right. One day I decided to treat myself for my birthday by getting myself a Chanel bag. As soon as he saw the new purchase, he started acting like I was addicted to shopping. And then he starts bringing up all these other things. How I like going to Starbucks, how I like going to the nail salon, and that's when I realized it. He had access to my bank account. He could see all of the transactions that I was making. And of course he could. I was in my office all day while he had access to my laptop at home. And of course it didn't occur to me to change my passwords. I was actually really shocked when he started bringing all of this up. Then he suggested that I should let him manage my money. And at first I just went with it. Said okay, and that's when he literally took my credit card from me. Then he started moving money around my accounts and started buying crypto. After 2 months of that, I was done. I asked him to give me my credit card back, which he did. He started guilting me into feeling like I shouldn't go to the nail salon and do these little small things that make me feel good about myself. He was brainwashing me. A few weeks later, it was time for me to upgrade my car. So I decided to get a Tesla. And when I told him, he got so angry. I could see in his face that he was so envious. He spent 2 hours trying to talk me out of getting the stupid Tesla. But the very next day, I went straight to the Tesla store and bought my car. When I finally got the car, he started driving it all over town before I drove it. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my husband controls all my money while he's totally broke and unemployed. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. After he started driving my brand new Tesla before I did, I started getting really snippy with him. I was always angry and in a bad mood. That's when he started getting even more controlling and this time jealous again. He started to suspect that I was cheating on him. He started showing up to my office to just check on me. By the way, I'm totally aware that if I leave him, he has no money. So of course he's gonna be totally controlling of me. Unfortunately, this is when we started getting into really big fights. I reproached him for everything. Him controlling all of my money and literally telling me what I could or could not buy. And I finally mustered up the courage to ask him to get a job again. And I told him that if he didn't get a job to start paying for half of the bills and everything else, that I would simply file for divorce. He started to cry and he threw a tantrum, but eventually he said yes. Do you think that he moved a muscle to go get a job? No, he didn't. So I took it upon myself to see if my company was hiring. And they did. So now he's got a really good job because of me. I revoked all his access to my accounts and I have full control of all the crypto. Now I give him a weekly allowance. Cannot wait until he starts getting paid. My parents think I should get a divorce, but I'm not sure. What should I do?
Storytime about how my fiance cheated on me with 10 other girls. So a little background information, I met this guy on Instagram and we're gonna call him Bryce. Now, when him and I met, he was stationed in Korea and he refused to ask me to be his girlfriend until he came home. So I waited an entire year for him to ask me to be his girlfriend. Which low-key should have been a red flag, but he made it seem romantic in some twisted, weird way. So fast forward, he comes home in February, and he kept to his promise. The first day that we met, he asked me to be his girlfriend. So I say yes, fast forward. Him and I start having a ton of arguments because of things that he was doing while he was in Korea. Fast forward, we're officially together for 9 months. So fast forward, of course, he gets deployed to Europe in like September of 2022. So this man decides that he's going to propose to me in July and then beg me to get married to him before he leaves. Now, I may have ignored the first red flags, but I'm not dumb. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with 10 other girls. So like I said, this man begs me to get married to him before he leaves, and thank goodness I didn't because divorce papers would have been served the same day. So fast forward, he starts acting super weird. He's going out 24/7. He's getting drunk. He's not wearing the ring that he begged me to get him. Yes, he literally begged me for a ring so that way women would know that he had a girlfriend. Well, then of course I get a DM from a girl on Instagram asking if him and I were still together. And then after talking to her, I realized he literally made a Tinder 2 days after he got deployed. And what was his excuse? Oh, I wanted to meet friends to teach me German. And listen, I was not born last night, so I kept that conversation going because I wanted to get to the bottom of what the fuck was actually going on. And then, of course, he finally comes clean that he cheated on me with a bunch of girls. Oh, and you want to know the icing on the cake? One of them was a minor. Yup. After I leave him, he has the audacity to ask for my ring back, but I threatened to tell Storytime about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother, and he still doesn't know. So a little background information, I am 19 years old and I'm in college. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for about 2 years and we're gonna call him Josh. The 2 years that we've been dating have been super rocky because he would try to hook up with other girls. Well, no, actually he wouldn't try. He would hook up with other girls. And then, him and I would break up and then we would get back together. Just your usual toxic relationship. The main reason why I kept going back to him was because he was super popular, and this made me feel like I was never going to find anybody better than him, so on and so forth. Now, Josh's brother is 21 years old, and somehow, some way, him and I started hooking up. Right around after the time I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. Yes, my cousin. I'm saying that like I'm not hooking up with his brother. Anyways. Well, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test, and it came back positive. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother, and he still doesn't know. So, like I said, my boyfriend cheated on me with my cousin, and somehow that led to me hooking up with his younger brother. Well, fast forward, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test and it came back positive, of course. And the first thing that I did was go to Josh's brother because him and I were hooking up way more than my boyfriend and I were within the past few months. Well, we both came to the conclusion that I should just tell my boyfriend that it's his and see what happens from there. So I told my boyfriend I'm pregnant and he was super happy, gave me this whole speech about how he's going to be a better boyfriend for me and the baby, which in simpler terms pretty much means, yay babe, I'm going to stop cheating on you since you're pregnant, but only because you're pregnant. So now my boyfriend is raising my 1-year-old daughter who he thinks is his, and I'm still hooking up with his brother.
The asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother. A month ago, I borrowed my mom's phone and she had no idea, but I looked at all of her apps and found that she was cheating with multiple men. I'm 26 years old and my parents have now been married for 30 years. I actually got separated when I graduated from high school, but then they got back together a few years later. My mom has always been the one that wants to separate my dad, but he keeps wanting to get back together with her. My dad is actually in love with this woman. He adores her. He does everything for her. He's super affectionate with her, loves to take her out on dates, gives her so much of his time, and she still doesn't appreciate it. I've always been closer to my dad than my mom. My mom's always trying to find an excuse to go party with her friends, but now I know why. Like I said, I ended up borrowing her phone and she probably didn't expect me to go snooping. And honestly, it wasn't even my intention. I'm scrolling on her phone and I see the app Tinder. I nearly fell out of my seat. So I quickly scrolled through everything and started taking pictures. My mom was sending nudes to random men. Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? That's when I saw that she was sending nudes to men on different apps. Not only was she on Tinder, she was also on Bumble and an app for older people. Mind you, my father is still in love with this woman. I managed to take pictures of everything on the apps. Here's the worst part. Start going through her messages and that's when I found that she has a boyfriend. At that point, I didn't know how long they'd been together. Now I know that she's been with him for 6 months. So every single time she goes on her weekend trips with her friends, she's actually with her boyfriend. And get this, she uses my dad's money to pay for everything. An entire week passed before I confronted her. First, I didn't know how to confront her, but I had to just do it. Every time I saw my dad, I would start to cry and he was worried about me. I didn't have the heart to tell my dad until I confronted my mom. I went up to her and I showed her all the receipts I had. Then she got pissed at me for looking through her phone. By the way, at this point, I'm still living with my parents. That's when she threatened to kick me out of the house if I told my dad anything. My own mother threatening me. Then she tried to smack me across the face, so I smacked her. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? After she slapped me, I slapped her back. And I slapped her so hard she actually fell on the floor. I instantly felt bad and tried to apologize. That's when she started to cry and I started to cry. I asked her to just be honest with me and tell me the truth. She told me that she wasn't in love with my dad anymore, but that she felt bad for him because he was still in love with her. And that she'd been dating this new guy for 6 months. She even confessed that she was addicted to going on dating apps and flirting with men. That's when I told her she needed to tell my dad. That she needed to stop using his money to take her boyfriend out. Then another confession. She had spent over $25,000 on hotels that she would book for her and her new boyfriend. And apparently this guy was broke. He couldn't pay for himself. She tried to negotiate with me. If I don't tell my dad, she'd break up with her boyfriend and stop using the apps. I mean, she's my mother and I don't want to cause her pain, but it's my dad. I ended up telling her that I wouldn't tell my dad. But 2 nights ago, my dad went on a work trip. My mom is so stupid, she actually snuck in her boyfriend through her window. I heard them doing the dirty all night. Now she's begging me again not to tell my dad. I'm planning on telling my dad tonight. I'll have to keep you guys updated. Give me advice.
Crazy ass story time about how my best friend's parents walked in on me sleeping with my best friend's brothers. And yes, I said brothers. So my freshman year, I became best friends with this girl. And she had 2 older, hot ass brothers. One was in college, and one was a senior. Well, it was Christmas break, and her older brother from college was home. And my parents let me go with them to Florida for Christmas break. They had a super nice beach house, and I was sharing a room with my best friend. And the boys were sharing a room. And our room was connected because there was a bathroom in the middle. Well, my best friend got super sick the first 3 days of the trip, so she didn't do anything with us. So I was hanging out with the boys all the time. Well, the one night we were on the deck and we started to play Truth or Dare. And one of them asked, "Would you sleep with us?" And I said, yeah. So at around 3 a.m., I snuck into the room and things started to get real nasty. There are kids on this app, so just use your imagination. And things started to get really loud and we woke their parents up, like for part 2. How to tell if he is a fuckboy. Tip number 1, and this is from personal experience. Don't get offended by these. It's happened to the best of us. Tip number 1, if he has like 20 different girlfriends before you, and he says every single one of them has cheated on me and broke my heart, the chances are he's cheated on every single one of them. That happened to be the excuse with me, and then I got cheated on. Tip number 2, if he is always talking about your body, if he's always saying, oh, your body looks so nice, chances are that's the only thing he's interested in. Tip number 3, if he only texts you late at night, chances are he's looking for a booty call, or he wants pics, and he does this often. Yeah, he's probably just looking for some entertainment for that night. Send this to someone who needs to hear it, because bitch, these are red flags. Part 2. So we thought that we woke their parents up, and we heard someone walking up the stairs. So I ran into the bathroom, hid, and they asked if everything was okay, and I was just like, oh, I'm not feeling good. I think I caught whatever my best friend has. So they went back downstairs, and we thought they went back to sleep. They were never asleep. So we decided to go onto the deck and finish the nastiness that we were doing. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, like, we don't have to be that quiet now. Because their bedroom was in the front of the house and the porch was on the back of the house. And we were on the second floor, and below that there was another porch with like a fire pit and everything. And I could see below us. Well, out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw somebody walk into the house. But stupid me, I just ignored it. Not even a minute later, I hear the sliding door open. And I hear, and we all turn around and everybody's standing there. So they sent me home and told my parents. But I didn't get grounded because low-key my mom knew I was a hoe.
Story time about how I was accused of sexual harassment and I got fired for it. This is my personal story time, by the way. The villain of the story, named Justin, he and I got along really well. And I sat next to him every single day at work. By the way, Justin was the youngest guy out of the entire company. Everyone else was middle-aged white men, while me and my best friend are beautiful and young and gorgeous. As you can imagine, we got stared at a lot. To be honest, this didn't really bother me because I've been stared at a lot in life. But when you find out what happened, it's infuriating. Walking down the street doing this voiceover. This is how badly I want to post this. The owner of the company is Bob. Bob and I got along really well. You see, I thought I was taken seriously in this workplace. I thought that I had value. But of course, apparently to these older white men, I did not. Today I get home from work and I get a message from Gabe, my manager. I don't like Gabe. Gabe told me not to come into work. And the following day, he tells me not to come into work again. Can you see how this would freak anyone out? I had a really bad feeling. Serena had no idea what was going on. If she did, she would tell me. This girl had my back always. Part 3 will be up soon. Story time about how I was accused of sexually harassing my coworker and got fired for it. This is my personal story time. Well, when I was told for the second time not to come into work, I was completely freaked out. Serena, who got me the job, asked me to meet her at Central Park. I had a bad feeling. Can you guys believe that S3 asked my best friend to fire me? They didn't have the balls to do it themselves because they knew that what they were firing me for was completely unfair. I get to Central Park and Serena tells me that they fire me. By the way, another coworker was there. His name was Jason. By the way, Jason had the same job as Serena and I and got paid a lot more. Inequality does exist. Went into a depression. I was anxious, was afraid, didn't know what had happened. Emailed the company asking what happened and they didn't want to tell me. Anyway, a couple of months later, I find out that Justin had gotten me fired. He told the boss that I was offering him blowjobs. By the way, when I got fired, Justin offered me financial help, pretended to be my friend. What an asshole. October of that same year, he performed the song in Culiacan live. He projected an image of El Chapo in the background the entire time. And as you can imagine, this was pretty offensive to a lot of people. After that, he denied that he had any connection to the cartel. And then we have the iconic video of him talking about Bad Bunny at a concert.
En todo puto México, somos los primeros que han puesto un corrido en el top 1, superando al pendejo del Bad Bunny. ¿Por qué? Porque los mexicanos somos la puta verga.
But then him and Bad Bunny were seen talking at a concert. I don't know if it was at Coachella or something like that. I think they're probably on good terms, and it also benefits Bad Bunny if he is. Peso Pluma is everywhere right now, and if he were to collaborate with anybody, it should probably be Peso Pluma just because they're both so popular. March 17 of 2023, Ella Baila Sola was released.
Story time about my toxic ex-best friend. So a little background information. I had a very close guy friend who we're gonna call Max. Now, Max was 2 years older than me, but due to our families being super close, him and I became best friends. Growing up, I saw him as kind of an older brother. And then eventually, as we grew up, I saw him as my best friend. Until I realized that he was actually a terrible person. And I missed all of the signs that he was not a real friend. Like one, our first fight, I told him something that I didn't want anybody else knowing. And what do you know, right after I tell him, my family knows, his family knows, my crush knows, all of our friends know. After this, I probably should have distanced myself, but he apologized and we became friends again. That was sign number 1. Sign number 2, his huge change in attitude. One second, he would be extremely rude to me, and then he would be this really sweet and caring guy, and his apologies were the best. So it was really hard not to forgive him. He was like a master manipulator. Number 3, we only talked whenever it was convenient for him. Like seriously, we would never talk, unless he needed something, like for part 2. Part 2 about my toxic ex-best friend. I think we left off on sign number 3, which was the only time that we would talk was when it was convenient for him. He would never reach out, which left me being the one who was constantly trying to preserve our friendship or whatever was left of it. Like, all of our messages were literally me, and it made me seem really needy, and like I was putting in way too much effort because he would literally answer with the most simple messages. Like, yeah, okay, sure. And he would only talk to me whenever he wasn't with his friends. Sign number 4. It felt like he was embarrassed of me. Now, I know that I was 2 years younger than him, but we were still friends, and I really don't think that's that much of a difference. Like, he would never want to be seen with me. The last sign, he would literally always talk about me behind my back. And I thought this was just rumors at first, until finally several people told me that it was not a rumor. He would say things like, oh, she's ugly, she's so immature, she's annoying and childish, she's so annoying. And then I finally decided to cut him off. Because if the bad outweighed the good, was it really worth keeping that person in my life? Story time about how my sister went missing on our family vacation. So little background information, my sister, my family, and I decided to stay at a beautiful luxury resort in the Caribbean. Now my sister was quite a few years older than I was, but I was super excited because my sister and I were finally going to be able to spend time together after her being away at college for what felt like so long. Which her and I did spend a lot of time together, but my sister was living her best life. She was young, smart, outgoing, beautiful, and everything else under the sun. Allison, aka my sister, was the girl who in a room full of 100 other people, she was the one who caught your eye. And of course, all of the guys were drooling over her. There were the boys that were her age, and then there were the older men, and then there were even some of the married men. Gross, I know. And even some of the women. But she had 2 little vacation situationships going on. And like I said, she was living her best life until she wasn't. The one night my sister Allison ended up not coming back to the room. And that was the plot of Saint X, a new show on Hulu with new episodes every Wednesday streaming now.
I was accused of sexually harassing a man and I got fired for it. I am terrified of telling you guys this story because of who I'm gonna mention. The company that I worked for is very powerful and I think that they would sue me if I said names, but I'm going to tell you guys anyway because what happened to me was really unfair. Back in 2018, I had just gotten married and my best friend was working at a company called Ester in New York City. At first, it was a really good company to work for because I was making a lot of money. The job was not incredibly hard. It wasn't really stressful or anything, so I actually really liked it. A little background on Ester. It was a totally male-driven workplace. Majority of the men were middle-aged white men. My best friend and I were the only young females there, so as you guys can imagine, surrounded by all these older males, get stared at a lot. So my desk was next to someone called Justin, and Justin is the villain in this story. Justin and I sat next to each other and we became pretty friendly, work friends. I was not remotely interested in anything with him because I was married. We joked a lot. We talked about music. I'm a huge movie buff because I'm an actress, and he knew that. Specifically a movie called American Psycho with Christian Bale, which is one of my favorite movies. The joke was that he would be perfect in that role because he was living in New York, working in finance. My friend and some of the other people that worked there told me that ever since I had been hired, Justin was really friendly, in a good mood all the time. He would joke. Apparently, before I got there, he wasn't the joking type. He wasn't like happy or in a good mood. So that tells you a lot, right? I'm actually so nervous telling you guys this story because I'm mentioning names, but look at those brows. So I was very grateful for this job because it paid really well. To be honest, I just never knew what was coming. By the way, you guys, Justin knew that I was married. Like, we talked about my husband. One day I get a message from the guy who hired me at the job, and his name was Gabe. He was the manager. I get a text from Gabe and he's like, basically, don't come in today. We don't need you to come in today. I immediately froze and felt sick to my stomach. Obviously that's weird, right? For your job to tell you that. And I even texted Gabe and said, what's wrong? He said nothing. Sorry guys, I had to turn on the AC because I'm starting to sweat. The following day, I'm fully expecting to go back into work because I went to work every single day. If I'm not mistaken, I get an email this time from Gabe saying not to come in. I immediately text Serena and I was like, what the heck? She said, just relax, it's okay, we don't know what's happening. And I was like, okay, fine. Later that day, she tells me if I could meet her in the park. We both had a bad feeling. She had a bad feeling, I had a bad feeling. And as soon as I see Serena, my best friend, she starts to cry. And then I start to cry. She wasn't alone. She was with Jason, who was somebody who worked at S3 as well. By the way, Jason did the exact same job Serena and I did and got paid a whole lot more than her and I did. A whole lot more, which doesn't surprise me coming from white middle-aged men thinking that women should earn less than men. I think the first words out of my mouth were, "What happened?" And that's when she says, "I don't know why they're firing you." We both cried. Her and Jason comforted me as much as they could. I went home. And when I get home, guess who I text? Because I'm trying to find out information. I'm trying to find out what happened, what went wrong. I text Justin. "You're not going to believe this. I just got fired." And I asked him, "Have you heard anything? Have you overheard any conversations about why I was fired?" And guess what he says, you guys? Jesus Christ. "Oh, if you ever need any financial help, let me know. I'm here for you." That's really kind of him. And he said no, that he hadn't heard anything. And I decided to believe him. I got an email from the company sending my severance letter. I emailed back and I think I said, "Why? Can I know why? Like, what did I do?" They weren't telling me why. They weren't telling me anything. Is that even legal that you get fired and they don't tell you why? Months go by. I'm on my honeymoon. I didn't have my honeymoon right after I got married. I had it after. Serena calls me and she tells me, "I finally found out what happened and why you were fired." And I remember her even saying, like, "Do you want me to tell you right now or do you want to like wait until you come back?" And I was like, no, tell me right now, which is so sweet of her for just even considering my feelings because I was on my honeymoon and she didn't want to, ruin anything for me. She tells me that one of the other girls that was working there overheard a conversation about how Justin had told the owner of the company, Justin told Bob I was offering him blowjobs when no one was around and that I had done it on several occasions. Listen, I know men get harassed in the workplace, they get sexually assaulted, but here are the facts. I have been harassed. I have been sexually assaulted. And that's happened on several occasions. I would never repeat that behavior onto somebody else. I would never, ever do that. If you're watching this and that's happened to you, I'm so sorry. Also, why would I do that in the workplace knowing that I could lose my job? Why would I ever do that? So what could Bob, the owner, do other than fire me? Nothing. He was gonna fire me. They fired me. They didn't ask me questions. There was no investigation. You know what made me so upset? The fact that these people, they thought that I was a predator. And there was no way for me to rectify that. There was no way for me to be like, "Hey, that's not true." I couldn't defend myself. I wasn't given the chance to do that. This girl gathered that Justin had very strong feelings for me, that he couldn't deal with it, and that the only thing that he could do was to get me fired so that I could be away from him because he had very strong feelings for me. What happened to me after I got fired was pretty bad. I would say I was even traumatized. I was so afraid. What could I have done wrong? It was easy to just fire me, throw me away, like I was nothing. No explanation. It's like someone pulled the floor from under you and you're just left falling and you can't grab onto anything. Learn to recognize red flags and just, I guess, don't be as friendly to men in the workplace. And if you have a story time like mine that you want to share, you can send it to me on Instagram here. And I love you guys so much. Take care of yourselves.
Storytime about how my boyfriend was hiding his 2-year relationship from me. So a little background information, I was 18 and a senior in high school. And in the middle of the school year, I had a new student in my 4th period class who we're going to call Jose, and he was 17 years old and in 11th grade. Now, he wasn't technically new because I'd seen him around school and everything like that. But up until this point, neither of us knew that each other existed. So he gets introduced to the class, blah, blah, blah. He sits in the very back of the room. And I knew that this man was going to be my boyfriend. So when I got home that day, I was texting my friend about him. Thankfully, she gave me his Snapchat. Fast forward, we're talking, and elevators get brought up. Now, in my school, you were not allowed to use the elevators unless you're injured or for some other reason. Well, he was talking about how he always used the elevators and nobody really cared. So I meet him at the elevator the next day and blah, blah, blah. We start flirting. And this led to him and I being super close. Like, we would FaceTime every day. We would always sit together at lunch, in class. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was hiding his 2-year relationship from me. So like I said, every day after that, him and I were pretty much inseparable. We would FaceTime literally 24/7. We would always sit together during lunch, during class. Well, the one day I'm sitting in my homeroom and he comes in and he asked me to be his girlfriend. Of course I said yes. So fast forward to Halloween, my family was handing out candy and he was going trick-or-treating with his family because he had younger siblings. And this is where our families were supposed to meet, but he didn't end up coming to my neighborhood, which I was super happy about. Well, then fast forward to my birthday. Our families were supposed to meet again, but it didn't end up happening again. And I wasn't really sure if this was the reason why things got weird between him and I. The one night I was over at my friend's house and Jose's on FaceTime with me.
And I was talking about how I could pick him up and him and I could hang out. And he literally just didn't even say anything. So I was like, okay, is that a no? So then he was like, I don't know. I might be busy, blah, 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 blah. Like for part 3. Storytime about this psycho who was in love with me and tried to kidnap me. So a little background information. I was 14 and in 9th grade. And I just started high school when I met this guy, and we're going to call him Liam. Well, he was pretty much in all of my classes, so him and I started talking a lot. We eventually became best friends, and then he texted me one day saying, hey, I need to talk to you. Which was super weird, but whatever. So I see him the next day at school, and I'm like, hey, like, it was a little weird that you texted me that, and then you never said anything after. So then he looks at me, and he's like, I'm in love with you. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's a little bit out there, but okay. So then he keeps going, but everything that he says just keeps getting creepier and creepier. And then this man says, well, even if you don't love me back, I can still have you to myself and I can turn you into a doll. What the hell? So, I try to awkwardly laugh it off, even though it really was not funny at all. Well, he did not like my response to that little speech he just gave me. Like for part 2. Part 3 about how my boyfriend was hiding his 2-year relationship from me. So like I said, him and I are on FaceTime. I'm asking him if he wants to hang out, and he's being super weird about it, being super standoffish. Well, fast forward a little bit, he seemed like he wasn't interested in me anymore, and it really hurt my feelings, obviously. So he didn't talk to me the rest of the day, and then he texted me the next day. And he was telling me how different we are and how we barely have anything in common and how we rushed into things. Pretty much a bunch of shitty excuses as to why he thinks that we should break up. Well, after that, him and I don't speak for a few days, and then I had a fake account on Instagram. And after our breakup, I viewed his story the one day. So then I look at his Instagram story, he posted a picture of another girl with a heart. And then I found her account, and she had pictures of them dating back from like 2 years ago. Now, still to this day, I don't know if he was cheating on her or if they were on a break or whatever, but I also thought that it was weird that they were dating because she was 19 and he was 17.
My ex-boyfriend is threatening to expose our SEX tape if I don't get back with him. Disclaimer is not my story time. I've sent me on Instagram. I broke up with my ex 3 months ago, and it's become my personal nightmare. We actually only dated for 6 months on and off. At the time, I didn't know it, but he was definitely love bombing me from the beginning. At the time, I didn't even know what that was. Not until I started watching TikTok. We met at a bar, which is the worst place to meet a guy, by the way. He was all over me the first night he met me. He was trying to kiss my neck, and he even tried to grab my butt. I told him he needed to calm down, and he did. The following week, he managed to get a hold of my friend on Instagram, and he convinced my friend to give him my number. And my stupid-ass friend gave it to him. He was extremely manipulative, too. I later found out that my friend had a crush on him, so she was just trying to give him my number so she had an excuse to talk to him. Once this man got my number, it was a constant barrage of text messages. He would text me every single morning. He would send me selfies, and all of this without my permission. I've only dated broke guys in the past, and my ex has a lot of money. So I decided to go out with him just to get a free dinner. Biggest mistake of my life. He forced a kiss on me on our first date. Part 2 is up. I caught my dad cheating with my best friend, and he doesn't want me to tell my mom. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. My dad and I have never gotten along. He's the type of dad that whenever I bring my friends over, he's literally always flirting with them. He'll make sure to be home when he knows my friends are coming. He's really into bodybuilding, so he's pretty fit. So he'll just walk out shirtless into the kitchen while my friends and I are having lunch. I'm constantly telling him to cover up because it's totally embarrassing. 2 weeks ago, I noticed something weird. My best friend was drinking a Starbucks in the kitchen, and when I came into the kitchen, I saw her and my dad quickly let go of their hands. Like they were holding hands. Of course, they played it off and I didn't say anything. Our backyard has a pool house, and that's usually where my dad hangs out. By the way, my mom is an amazing woman. She owns a Pilates studio and basically pays for everything. Go to the pool house, and that's when I find my dad going down on my best friend. His head was up underneath her skirt. I literally vomited as soon as I saw it. Part 2. My husband forced me to watch him do it with another woman. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. This is when I gained another 10 pounds just to piss him off. In retaliation, he started kicking me out of our bedroom at night. If I would get into bed, he would literally kick me off the bed. That's when he told me that I needed to go downstairs and work out, or at the very least, stop eating. At this point, I knew that he had been having an affair with his work wife. So I decided to ask him directly. He had no shame in telling me that he was having an affair with her. That's when he started saying things like, her body is way better than yours. He even said that he was more than happy to bring her over so that I could meet her. And that's what he did the very next day. He brought her to our house. I expected her to be on my side and tell him absolutely no. Instead, she started calling me names as soon as she came into our house. She started referring to me as the fatty. Suddenly, they started getting naked. And I just watched. Part of me couldn't believe it. I was frozen in time. While they were getting it on the couch, I was sitting there crying. The whole time my husband is calling me a pig. When they were done, they left. 2 days later, he asked me for a divorce. But I don't want to give it to him. He'll have to die married to me. What should I do?
Story time about how I got my ex toxic best friend jumped. So a little background information, I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And like any of these toxic best friend story times, she was super jealous of me for literally no reason. She would literally try to be better than me in everything. Like when I did a sport or a club, she would join immediately right after. And it wasn't I'm gonna join my best friend. No, it was, I'm gonna join so that way I can show her that I'm better than her. For example, in 6th grade, I was captain on the volleyball team, and she decided that she was gonna try out her sophomore year. She played it off as if she just wanted to try it out, but then I got announced captain, and she was pissed off when she heard that. She literally blocked me on everything, and she came from a super wealthy family, so she was used to getting whatever she wanted. And my whole friend group would literally tell me, you need to stop being friends with her, she's toxic, she's this, she's that. The only thing that stopped me from being friends with her was the blackmail, like for part 2 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, the only thing that was stopping me from not being her friend was the blackmail that she had. Every time that I pissed her off, or even just randomly, she would be like, oh, I'm gonna send this out. I'm gonna expose you. She was just overall a shitty friend. So I had an exposing account on Instagram where I would expose people in my class. It got banned, but she DM'd the account the blackmail. Little did she know it was literally me who was running it. Obviously, I didn't post it, but I showed one of my friends, and we kind of made a plan to get rid of the blackmail. So my birthday was coming up, and I was going to Disney, and my mom said that I could invite 2 friends. Originally, I wasn't going to invite Tessa, but since I had this plan, I invited her and one of my other friends. On the 3rd night, my friend and I decided to take our plan into action. Tessa was sleeping, so I went on her phone, and I went and deleted all the pictures, like for part 3. Part 3 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, on the 3rd night, she was sleeping, so we went on her phone. I deleted all of the blackmail that she had on me, and I even went a step further and screenshotted all of the nudes that she was sending back and forth with older guys, and these guys were way older than her, like way older. And I sent them to myself and deleted the text off of her phone. Fast forward, we drop her off at her house. I stay over my friend's house, and we decide that we're going to post everything to my exposing page. And we also came up with a really good idea. Why not send this to Tessa's parents? So we sent them to her parents. And guys, when I tell you this exposing page had so many people on it, it really did. Somebody was like, OMG, like, please send a face reveal, like, I won't tell anybody. So what did I do? I sent a picture of Tessa, and that person posted it to their Snapchat story. Fast forward to the first day of school. We're outside for gym class, and 3 girls beat her.
Storytime about how I became an IG model / escort for billionaires. Tell you that last month I made $60,000. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, and send me on Instagram. So at the beginning, I had to lie about my age. I'm really 36 years old, but I say I'm 22. I do look a lot younger than I am, and of course, I get filler and Botox. I started my Instagram account 6 years ago. My inspirations were Anna Cherie, Amanda Lee, I am JoJo, and Abigail Ratchford. I mean, Abigail Ratchet. I basically copied all of these girls' pictures. Within a month of starting my Instagram account, I had 10,000 followers. And yes, all of them were males. But I didn't really start making money until 2018. You know, like every other girl on Instagram, I signed up for OF. And that's when I started making serious money. But I was also making money from Instagram. Brands would send me clothes and watches and protein powders, stuff like that. Eventually, I became an ambassador for one of the biggest Instagram clothing stores. I think we all know what I'm talking about. Fashion Hova, and I started making a lot of money then. So I basically started living above my means. I got myself a new apartment in Beverly Hills, and it was $6,000 a month. I also got myself a Mercedes, and I would exclusively shop at Air One. I would also go shopping at Rodeo Drive almost every day because I wanted the paparazzi to get pictures of me. And I even called the paparazzi on me a few times, so I had to pay them like $2,000 out of pocket. So yeah, I was spending a lot of money. Whatever money I got that month, I would literally spend it by the end. One month I spent $25,000 going out with friends. I would usually pick up the bill. This is what started getting me into trouble. Part 2 is story time about how I became an IG model / escort for billionaires. After I spent the $25,000 in 1 month, I decided I needed another income source. So I thought of escorting. One of my very good friends in LA was also an escort, and she told me about it, but I was like, I can't do that. But one day I called her and she told me everything. She gets contacted through Instagram by very, very rich men, like billionaires. I honestly didn't believe her at first, but then she showed me receipts. Her bank account had more than $1 million in it. She told me that she had only been doing it for 6 months. She put me in contact with several people, and they had to verify a bunch of my stuff. stuff. Then after a week, I was finally in. But I was really scared. I had to go get my passport renewed. This meant that I was going to be traveling internationally with men that I didn't know. A few days later, I get a message on Instagram from an account. The guy that owned this account was clearly very rich. It wasn't him contacting me, it was his assistant. He got my information, and 2 days later, I was on a private plane. I landed in a foreign country, and I spent the entire weekend with this guy. He didn't speak English. Basically took me around his city and showed me off for his friends. I honestly didn't feel uncomfortable at any point, and he didn't try anything. In fact, he was actually super shy, but his friends on the other hand were really handsy. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how I became an Instagram model / escort for billionaires. That's when his friends started getting really handsy. We were in a really expensive high-rise and the apartment was literally worth millions. And I knew that all of these guys were used to getting whatever they wanted. One of the friends actually grabbed my arm and told me to sit on his lap, but I told him I couldn't. He wasn't the one that hired me to be there, so I had to go straight to the guy that hired me. I told him that his friends were making me uncomfortable and he said, okay, we should leave then. I was actually shocked that he listened to what I wanted. Now one of my regular clients and I travel with him almost every 2 months. So let me tell you how much he paid me. For the 3-day weekend, I ended up with $50,000. Yep, that's right. But let me tell you a little about the dark side of this. A few jobs later, I ended up with somebody who was completely crazy. I ended up going to Vegas with this guy. He was approximately 10 years younger than me and was filthy rich. But he was also a complete psycho. He bought me this whole outfit that he wanted me to wear the entire night. I told him I was more comfortable in my clothes. I was wearing a Fendi dress. It looked great. That's when he said, no, you're gonna wear this. I ended up walking around Vegas in a micro mini skirt and a bikini top. By the end of this night, he was getting really aggressive. I tried to stay quiet, hoping that he would just forget that I was in his car. Suddenly, he turned to look at me and wanted me to do something. When I said no, he grabbed me by the hair and told me that he owned me for the night. Then he said, I'll add an extra $20,000 in there for you. And it does get worse. But now I learned to save my money. I no longer pay for my friends' drinks and food. I still have my $6,000 apartment and I upgraded my car. I live like a princess. I also bought my parents a house though. It was definitely one of the happiest days of my life. And believe it or not, I actually did end up finding love. My boyfriend is okay with my job, but he just asked me to be safe. Of course, he asked me every day to quit because he wants to support me, but he can't give me the life I've given myself. What should I do?
Story time about how this boy stabbed me with a pencil in kindergarten. So a little background information, I was 6 years old and in kindergarten, obviously. I'm not gonna lie, this story kind of shows that it doesn't matter how old a child is, they can literally still be very mean and yeah. Well, during the middle of the school year, there was this new kid who came to our class and his name was Freddie. Now, Freddie coming in the middle of the year was kind of sad because everybody already had their friends. They didn't really want to talk to the new kid. And what made it even worse was the fact that he was a teacher's pet and he was the teacher's favorite. So he was always picked to go up to the board and be the line leader, which made the kids hate him even more. For example, during lunch, Freddie would go and try to sit with some of the kids and they would call the teacher over, say that he was doing something that was annoying them or really gross. And the teachers would remove him and put him at a table alone by himself. And I was one of the kids that didn't really make fun of him. I just kind of sat back and laughed, which I know is terrible. But like for part 2. Part 2 about this boy who stabbed me with a pencil in kindergarten. So like I said, everybody would pretty much bully him, and I was one of the kids that just sat back and laughed, didn't say anything to him directly. Eventually, we were getting in trouble for discluding him. We would all have to stay inside during recess with our heads down on the desk in the dark. Then everybody act like they were going to include him. Like the one time they were like, okay, we're playing hide and seek, you go hide. And then they never went to find him. So then this kid actually started getting violent. My guess is because the teachers and principal were not doing anything about it. When everybody was walking, he would purposely trip kids. This one time, this girl brought in pencils for the whole class and she didn't give him one. So he said that he felt sick the one day and all the kids went out to recess. And he went around and broke every single pencil. And I came in and I found it, so I told the teacher. And then during nap time, he put his mat by me. And when I finally fall asleep, he literally comes over and stabs me in the back of the neck with a pencil. Story time about why I hate Valentine's Day. So a little background information. I was 22 years old and I had been dating this guy for almost a year. And we're gonna call him Jimmy. Most of Jimmy and I's relationship had been long distance. Because literally after 2 months of us dating, he was offered a job in a different state. And I never worried about him cheating on me or anything like that because he seemed like a really honest and genuine guy. But of course I was wrong because he said that he couldn't do anything for Valentine's Day because he had to work. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, well, I'm just gonna fly to him, so we can spend Valentine's Day together. And it'll be a nice surprise. So a few days before Valentine's Day, I get my plane ticket and I wanted to do something special. So I wore some nice lingerie under a trench coat.
Well, fast forward, my plane lands and I get an Uber to his apartment. And when I knock on his door, I hear a woman's voice from inside saying, "Don't worry, I'll get the door." Like for part 2. Part 2 about why I hate Valentine's Day. So like I said, I Uber to his apartment and I knock on the door and I hear some woman from inside say, "Don't worry, babe, I'll get it." So I hurry up and try to tie my coat because I had untied it thinking that my boyfriend was going to open the door. But no, why would my boyfriend open his own door to his own apartment that he lives alone in? So she opens the door and she's like, "Hi, what can I help you with?" And I'm like, "Oh, is this apartment blah, blah, blah?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh, well, is Jimmy here?" And she was like, "Yeah." So she calls Jimmy over to the door. I look directly at him and I'm like, "Oh, is this like your friend or something?" And she's like, "Excuse me, I'm his fiance." So I'm looking at him all confused and I start screaming that he's a liar, a cheater. He's like, "Babe, go call the police. I have no idea who this woman is. She sounds crazy." So his fiance walks away and he goes, "I'm sorry, I'll call you later." And then security escorts me off the property. Needless to say, I never talk to him ever again.
My boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. Should I leave him? Disclaimer's not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I know you guys are gonna all say yes immediately, but hear me out. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months. My best friend and I actually met him at a bar. That night, I never expected that he would ever come after me. I consider my best friend the prettier of the two of us, so I'm used to her getting hit on instead of me. But that night, my boyfriend came to me. He talked to me pretty much the entire night, and my best friend told me to go for it. So I did. He and I spent the night together, and after that, we were inseparable. To the point where he wanted me to move in with him after 2 months. My parents thought I was absolutely crazy and they didn't want me to move in with him, but I did anyway. I come from a Latino family, so this was absolutely reprehensible. I went against my family's wishes and they actually stopped speaking to me for a little bit, but luckily I got them back. My boyfriend during that time gave me all his support. He told me that my family would come around eventually and that they would see that we were in love. So living together was a logical next step. After 3 months of living together, I knew that I wanted to marry him, and he would talk about marriage all the time. He asked me what kind of ring I would want and what I would want for the proposal. We even started talking about our honeymoon. I was also starting to get in the best shape of my life. I was looking super snatched. My boyfriend told me that he loved the way that I look, but that he didn't want me to get skinny. Again, I just felt like he was supporting me and loving me. Around this time, my best friend started dating somebody. After a few weeks, they got really serious about the relationship. And of course, we went on double dates. After the 3rd double date, I noticed that my boyfriend was getting a little annoyed. I got the feeling he was jealous of my best friend's boyfriend. Follow for part 2. My boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. Should I leave him? Disclaimer's not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I asked him if he was jealous of my best friend's boyfriend, and that's when he said no. But every time we would go on double dates, he would get in such a bad mood. 3 weeks ago, my best friend told me that she was moving in with her boyfriend. And when I told my boyfriend that they were moving in, his face almost went green. I asked him what was wrong and he said nothing. After that, he went into the bathroom and didn't come out for 40 minutes. Again, I asked him if he was okay and he said yeah. And I sat him down and asked him to be honest with me. That's when he said, "I'm attracted to your best friend." Instantly started to cry because I had already been suspecting it. He explained to me that he didn't have any feelings for her until she got a boyfriend, and that he felt that he had some sort of ownership over her. Before my best friend got a boyfriend, the 3 of us would hang out a lot. And not once then did I ever get a feeling that he was attracted to her. He told me that he would never act on his feelings, but he didn't want to go on any more double dates. I asked him if he wanted to be with her instead of me, and he said absolutely not. He said that I was the love of his life and that attraction only meant attraction, that he didn't have feelings for her. A few days later, he took me to the most expensive restaurant in our city and asked me to marry him. But I didn't know what to say. I can't stop thinking that he's attracted to my best friend. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. What should I do? Disclaimer is not my story time. Sending me on Instagram. After he proposed, I told him I didn't know what to say. He told me to think it over. I finally decided to tell my best friend what my boyfriend had told me. That he had confessed that he was attracted to her. First, she laughed. I told her no. I'm serious. He confessed that he's attracted to you. That's when she told me I needed to break up with him. That's when I told her that he had also proposed. And she said, well, then you really need to break up with him now. That's when she told me that she didn't want me to resent her and that it was completely out of her control. And I didn't. I promised her that I would never resent her for my boyfriend being attracted to her. It's not like she ever did anything on purpose to make him feel attracted. She also told me that marrying him right now would be rushing into it. And she's kind of right. We've only really known each other for 6 months. Then she told me that she's never gotten the feeling that he's attracted to her. She's never caught him looking at her or anything like that. So now her theory is that he's looking for an easy way out and that he probably wants me to break up with him. But my boyfriend is still sweet and super affectionate. He's constantly showering me with love. My best friend thinks that if I stay with him, our relationship will suffer. I've known my best friend longer. What should I do?